Well, hello and welcome to this Fotospeed video with me, Tim Jones. We've got the lovely Sam Gregory and Julian Barid is still here.
Am I not lovely?
Even lovely.
I'm hurt.
So
I'm more hurt. I am lovely, apparently.
we thought we'd kind of do a video on Sam's work.
Oh, okay. Yes, we are. No, we are absolutely. We've done a series of videos with Julian talking about some images of his, and it's been really cool actually just hanging out with Julian a bit. We know each other a little bit. We bumped into each other, but because we work in quite different ways, and that's been really fun to talk about how we work and our end products, etc. But yeah, today there's 3 images of what I would call sort of inner landscapes from the Jurassic Coast in Dorset, where I live. It's still part of a lot of ongoing project I've got. But what I wanted to talk about was just a bit about the images with the guys and shooting in this style. And then we want to show you in Lightroom just a little tip around how to put them together if you wanted to print a set of 3 things on one page. So it's just a really simple little Lightroom tip. And then we're going to get them printed out, aren't we, Tim? We can talk about them, seeing them in print, basically. So let's dive into Lightroom and have a look.
Cool.
Yes,
so how, because these are part of a series, isn't it?
They are.
They're kind of, so how, was it just wandering or was it?
So yeah, okay, so the series came about because I wanted to do something close to home, which is, as I say, on the Jurassic Coast where I live. I've done previous bodies of work there before, which if you've seen it before, you may know about. But I really enjoy shooting the inner landscapes, so no horizons, no big vistas, small scale things. And really I wanted to do a new project in colour. That's the other big thing, because I've been doing quite a lot of black and white in the last couple of years. And for me, just the landscape there lends itself to colour because of the nature of the rocks and formations, and also the impermanence of those. You know, every time the tide comes in and out, and the sand and the rocks, you know, rise and fall as the tides come through the year. So I think there was something about working with an impermanent subject matter that I was keen to explore. But these 3 in particular, I wanted to put together as a 3 because I'm always thinking about how images will work with other images in the set. And so really there's a few sort of themes which I think hold these together, mostly around the colours and the tones though, to be honest. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up with these, and this is part of a much bigger ongoing set.
Okay.
And actually, joking aside, but we were talking about why you might work like this, weren't we, Julian, before? And it's interesting how we look for different things as photographers. I pray for grey, flat days to do this sort of work, and that would be contrary to how you work.
Exact opposite, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like, there's no right or wrong, it's just matching the conditions to how we each work, sort of thing.
And you're talking about making these images as part of a series, or you want them to complement each other. Does that mean you necessarily take them in the same day, or could you shoot one image one day and then it could be weeks before you find an image that goes with that?
Yeah, so pretty much you have hot days and cold days. I don't mean in temperature, but I might be very particularly, let's say, efficient one day where I might come back with 4 or 5, what I would say are keepers. And then there'll be plenty of days where nothing happens. But the whole thing will be over 18 to 24 months worth of going to the same 2 or 3 beaches, basically.
So you'll pair them up later on once you've got a bigger body of work to work from, right?
Yeah, so these 3, for example, actually 2 were from the same day, but 1 was about 3 months before. So yeah, absolutely. When you've got more content, I don't like calling them that, but we all know what I mean. When you've got enough of them, you start to see patterns in the colours, in the shapes, in the tones, whatever it might be, where you think they're going to match together.
I call them echoes.
Echoes.
Echo
Very nice. They do. Oh, these sort of scream at each other, but that's a different thing. So let's have a quick look at each one, perhaps first. I'm not going to spend long on this because I'd like to look at them in the prints. But you can see they're obviously all, you know, small scale inner landscape things. They're all shot at the same focal length. I tend to find with these things, I just go out with one lens, which is a fixed focal length, around 50mm, full frame sort of equivalent. And then it's just a case of, we were joking earlier about kind of wrangling your tripod legs in some sort of form where you don't fall over, where the tripod doesn't fall over. And there are some challenges technically. This one in particular I'm going to use as the example. from a focus point of view, I was only really about 30 to 40 centimeters above this. And although there isn't a huge gap between the the bottom left rock and then the far top right of the frame, which is obviously lower physically, you do have to focus stack, I find, at these. So this is about 8 images stacked together in Photoshop so that you have focus from the top of the frame to the bottom sort of thing. So
yeah, you wouldn't think it was
that many, would you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost kind of macro type photography, isn't it?
It is.
Dealing with if you've got such a shallow plane of
Yeah.
focus.
Yeah, you wouldn't think it, but you could shoot at f16 and it would be fairly close, but I would reckon that the top right, as we look at it, part of the frame would never quite be in focus with this one. So it's just really to do with that proximity to the subject plus the focal length. You know, if you were that close to something and you're shooting at 18 or 21 mil, it's different to shooting at 50 kind of thing. So yeah, I don't enjoy the stacking bit. I just know that is a necessity because I do want them to be sort of sharp from the very forefront to the back, even though they look like they're on a fairly flat plane of focus.
Do you manually capture the stacks, or do you get the camera to do this?
I do it in the camera.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, so like Nikon's have that, Sony's I think have it, Hasselblad's have it. I don't know what the Canon situation is, but in most cameras there is that step function. Yeah. They're not always particularly clear about how big those steps are.
No, it's a bit vague, isn't it, in places? Yeah.
So I've had to learn which step length to use and how many based on how far I am from the subject and the lens I'm using. So there's a little bit of a learning curve there, but it's absolutely doable. So that one I did, this one I didn't because I was further away from it, and actually who knows what the scale is. That's part of the reasons why I enjoy these, I suppose. There's ambiguity a little bit. So sometimes you can get away with just a fairly f16 or something like that. Anything above that you start obviously softening off because of the diffraction, etc. But this is another stacked one from obviously that stone in the sort of top left down to the little stones in the pool. It doesn't, again, it's only about 4 or 5 inches, but that close you do need to stack.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to show you though, actually, before we get to the prints, which Tim's very kindly done, I wanted to just show you an idea about how you might want to present these as like a panel of 3, because I enjoy putting images together like that, curating them into sets of 3 for print or just for show on the website or even social media, whatever it might be. So I know you guys will know how to do this, but anyone out there who maybe hasn't done this in Lightroom or you want a quick reminder, if you wanted to say maybe put these 3 together, you've got them in a collection to start with, so they're all there. We just sort of select them all. You can still only see one, right? First thing we'd need to do is just change the page setup so it's in a horizontal format. And then really easily, just over here, we've got this page grid. If we just drag that to be 3, hey presto, there's our 3 images. Now obviously we don't want them, I don't want them together like that for this. So what you can do is in the cell spacing, just go and put in, for example, a centimetre or 2 centimetres, whatever you feel most comfortable with. You can also drag around the order, so you can put the middle one on the left just by dragging down here in the panel. But I want them in this order.
Which I think you're right.
Yeah, do you? Oh, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Yeah, I think I'm right as well. But then
going back to those echoes, you've kind of got the stone in the bottom left and then in the, not quite in the top right, but it's almost there. Yeah,
and I think maybe the middle one has to be in the middle because of the nature of it. So, but that's a fun thing sometimes to do, is play around with curating things. And actually, this maybe isn't something I should say, but on some of these more abstract shots, you can actually try turning them upside down sometimes. And they sometimes work better. Yeah. Which sounds ridiculous because you think, well, I should have noticed that at the time.
No, I've done that myself on the other occasion that I take some abstract shots. Rotating the image, you find it actually works in a better aspect ratio or a better portrait, or it's better landscape.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's good just to move stuff about and rotate it around. That's why.
I do it all the time at camera clubs when I've printed some members' prints to talk about paper choice and things. I put them up on the print stand and they're upside down. Even done reflections of moon rises and things, and I put them up the wrong way around because they're so good you can't really tell.
Well, I think if it should balance upside down and the right way up, in my opinion. Most pictures should in lots of ways, but actually turning it sometimes makes you realise a problem you hadn't seen the right way up, or a darker area of the image that you hadn't really noticed was quite that dark or quite that light sort of thing. So anyway, that's just a little fun thing about curating. But this is a great way to just put them together to print, and then you can just send it to print as normal, or you can go to the printer mode and you can save that as a PDF, for example, and you might want to export that and then put it somewhere else. So just a neat little thing about how to use the Lightroom print module for a slightly different type of output. But why don't we just get the physical ones, Tim, and then we can just finish up by a little chat about the paper and any more thoughts from you guys.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah,
right,
brilliant.
Let's grab the prints. Okay, so we've printed off the pictures. We've printed off the 3 individuals, but we've also done the triptych as well, and all on platinum etching paper. So
yeah, it's my favourite paper. We'll talk about that maybe after. Hopefully you can see that it's just a neat way to print 3 things off, even if it was 3 of the same image with 3 variations on the edit or something.
It's nice.
But it's a nice way to present them and
yeah,
to
definitely
think about curating and things like that. But yeah, here are the 3 in situ, and we were talking about scale, weren't we, guys? About how it's quite nice to see these printed at this size, because that is actually about the size of the areas in reality, should we say? So that rock is actually a tiny bit bigger than that, but it's similar. Whereas normally, if we're looking at big vistas or if we're looking at portraits, we know it's been reduced into the size of the frame. So that's just an interesting thing about scale. But yeah, hopefully I find the colours work nicely.
They're just beautiful. On this paper particularly, I think the colours, they just work really, really nicely. And there's that subtle little bit of texture in the platinum etching, which I think just works really nicely.
Yeah, I think the textures, it's good to have a little bit, isn't it? But not crazy amounts. I don't know. How do you feel about them, Julian? Because I'm interested.
I love these pictures because it's obviously, as we've discussed when we've not been filming them, this is a complete opposite of what I would photograph. What do you call them? Close-up?
Inner landscapes.
Inner landscapes.
That's not my phrase.
Yeah, and I love all the different colours. I mean, the complementary sort of blues and the golden colours here are amazing. And it's funny, you talk about scale, and now that you've told me what the scale of this is, I still have a little bit of a hard time trying to appreciate it, particularly with this one here, where you got this here, and this could easily be a pebble, and then you look at the smaller objects down there and you think, well, maybe they're bigger and this is massive. It's really hard to tell, but I quite like that. I quite like the adventure of looking through these pictures and trying to work stuff out, and then as well as looking at the colours and the contrast. It's an interesting picture that makes you think.
It's almost you want to see some figures walking or something, don't you? It's kind of like
moonscape. Yeah, well, it'd be a funny moon if it goes that colour. But yeah, I know what you mean. That's really interesting to hear. I think I find these sorts of images really fun to try and take, because I love to finesse while I'm in the field, and really fiddling camera positions are important. We mentioned a bit about stacking the things together. You have to maybe shoot a bit wider to allow for that when you're in the field as well, because you can lose a bit of the sides.
And this is how you're finding things, isn't it?
Yes,
it's all found.
It's all found landscapes. So I think the great thing about this is, once you start to think like this, you can think there's never-ending images in the world. That's the theory. But there are times where you go out and you just can't seem to find anything because you're just not seeing stuff. But it is transient. They do move around. But by relying on what you find, it will always change and always be different. I couldn't go back to these beaches, even though I know them really, really well. I could not find these images again, because they either will have moved or the colours will have changed because of what's been happening with the weather, or I won't remember where it was, or you know what I mean. So I think that's quite exciting for me as well. It's a new palette every time I go out.
Well, and the palette's consistent across all 3 images.
Yeah.
You've got those blues, those silvery blues, and a hint of the golden. And
got
it
these
really works
oranges.
well, even though this one's a little bit different from perhaps the other 2.
Yeah,
they all still hold together.
Yeah, hopefully. But you never know. You have to put things together and try them in sets, and then you might change your mind or whatever. But that's something to play with at home, isn't it? Try and putting images you've got, even from different times and different periods. It needn't be as obvious as just the colours holding it together. It could be something else.
And the good thing about the printing, we were doing this just before we started filming, is we were rotating the images around just to see what they look like in different formats. And then we had quite interesting conversations about things like visual weight, about where that rock was actually placed.
Yeah. Absolutely, that's a good point, Julian, because we were just playing with moving them, and we said if you have the rock up high like that, technically it kind of works, but we all agreed that felt suddenly quite heavy at that end. Yeah, you could put them together like that as well.
You could see it in a book like this, but
Yeah.
you could.
I promise you that's not the same rock. It looks like it is.
It fits really nicely.
But honestly, it wasn't. But yeah, you're right. The visual weight of things can vary depending on their tonality and the brightness and darkness, as you very much know. And which way round up they are can really affect it. I think if it's something strong that we know is heavy physically in our backs of our minds, we know it should probably be at the bottom because it wouldn't make sense for it to be high in the sky and that heavy, if you see what I mean. So anyway, these are the myriads of things you can find when you go out looking at the beach, and I would encourage everyone to do so if they're so inclined anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows what's on your doorstep. I mean, you could do this in your garden as well, quite easily.
Yeah, I'd be a bit worried if they were all in my garden, but I know exactly what you
Yeah,
know. Working
yeah,
on the inner landscape is absolutely, yeah.
I also think this is a great way of, you were talking about trying to find images that work together, and then rather trying to do that digitally, actually making even some small A4 prints and getting a table at your kitchen table and just laying them out. And it's much easier to move stuff around and find how images pair using prints on a desk than it ever is going to be in.
Perhaps do a
screen,
big grid on a piece of A3 or A3 Plus or whatever, and then you can just chop them all up and move them
that's
around.
another good way of doing.
Yeah, I know people that stick them to walls as well, and move them around, and I'm never allowed to do that. But
we don't advise sticking it to the wall everywhere. We'll get in trouble, Tim. We'll get in trouble. Yeah, well, there we go. So those are 3 images.
Fantastic.
Hopefully you've enjoyed seeing them, a little bit of the background and that little tip about how to get them together in the print module.
So where's it going? Do you know?
Who knows?
It's just something at the minute.
Yeah, I think the other, sub-interesting point on this, we won't linger on this because we're about to wrap up, but this part of the coast, as all the parts of the UK and all coasts everywhere, will not be there in about 100 or 200 years, basically, if we carry on as we are. This isn't a call to arms, it's just the bare facts of it. These coasts erode. So there is something interesting for me about documenting what I find there right now, because it will not be the same in 50, 100 years' time. So but for me, next couple of years, it's just ongoing work, basically.
Nice.
Yeah.
Lovely.
That's it.
Right. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed that, looking at some of Sam's new work or ongoing work, I suppose. Don't forget to subscribe to the Fotospeed YouTube channel, and also don't forget to subscribe to the Fotospeed newsletter as well on photospeed.com, and you will get exclusive discounts as well as keeping up to date with all the news from us here at Fotospeed. Also, don't forget Fotospeed Art of Printing, the free ebook from Fotospeed you can download from photospeed.com. And I think that is about everything. So we will see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.